Why communication is always a challenge in projects. My name is Guilherme and I'm a project management expert. I help professionals and companies to develop their project management skills. How do I do that in practice? It can be in several different ways, but sometimes I provide training to make sure that they have right knowledge to develop their skills. Sometimes I help with one-on-one mentoring to really put more effort to help project managers develop their skills to help them to understand how they should organize better a project, how to make a proper prioritization, of course, to get better results, and sometimes I do consulting for other types of companies. Before I forget, make sure you like and share this video here. That always helps to get more people and more people learn project management, but also helps me and my channel to grow. So I would appreciate here your support if you see, of course, the value that what I'm doing here. The topic I'm going to talk about today is communication. Communication is one of the very common challenges that we face, and of course, I'm going to give you some background why we face it, and hopefully, also I'm going to give you some tips that you can follow to avoid it, to avoid communication issues there. But why communication is a challenge for in a lot of projects. In all projects, you are going to face, or in not only projects, but in everything that you do, when you are involving different people, you are going to face challenges with communication. For the first thing, so I'm going to ask you is to take a look in this picture here, so you understand a bit better, and I can exemplify it better. What do you see in this picture here? So, do you see a beautiful woman there, or do you see an old lady there? Depending how you are looking for, I can tell you both are right. You can always see a beautiful lady here on the screen, or you can see an old lady here. Just depending what you are going to focus first, depending how your brain is going, what your brain is going to process first. But that's something that happens in our reality in everything that we do. Sometimes we are looking for different stuff, we are looking for exactly the same thing, but we see different things in what we are doing that. And why does this kind of things happens? Well, because we are different people, we have different backgrounds, we have different histories, life history stories there. We were raised in different ways, we are raised in different countries, different languages, and so on. But that can happen that we are looking for exactly the same thing, and even with looking for exactly the same thing, we are going to see different things. So it might be a weird concept there, but that's of course why I brought an image to make sure that you understand these kind of things happens all the time there. So you can imagine in a project that you are executing with a team. If you have 5 people looking for this image, you are going to see that the people, different things, they are going to see different stuff. Maybe part of the team will see the old lady, other part of the team will see the beautiful woman. And of course, you enter an argument, and sometimes people will start to argue with each other, to saying to defend their point of view, but without the understanding and without the idea that in the end both are right. It's just a different type of perspective. That's why all the time you have different types of that you face challenges with communication in projects. And here also this is a culture map, and that that's this person here, Erin Meyer. She did some mapping to look for how the different cultures there they face, and how there's a variety in different cultures there. Meaning that you're going to see that how emotionally is expressive or unexpressive a determined specific culture is, how confrontational or avoids confrontation, how our cultural background affects it. Of course, this is in general generalization. It's very hard to talk to make a good generalization for everything. There's always going to be exceptions, but in general, you see a lot about this. For example, I'm from Brazil, and I see a lot of in Brazil. Usually, people tend to be more emotionally expressive. We tend to show a bit more our feelings. We are more in certain ways. You're going to see between brackets, of course, you can be more dramatic in certain situations. Compared, for example, if you look for a situation right now, I'm in the Netherlands. I've been living in the Netherlands already for 8 years, and you see that Dutch people, Dutch in general, they are much more less expressive emotionally. That does not mean that they are cold, just mean that they see things much more rationally than someone in certain situations than someone in Brazil would face this kind of stuff. And why I'm talking about those different things and when you're talking about communication again, because our culture, our background, where we have been raised and based on our culture, our first language there, will influence a lot how you're going to communicate it. A very nice example of that happened with me a few years ago already. I was already in the Netherlands, so I was working a project here, and we were working with a factory in Mexico. In Mexico, you see here, culture-wise, it's much more closer from Brazil. So what happened is there was certain activity that had to happen in the factory there, and then the manager of the department there that had to execute this type of activity, if I remember well, it was we had to the goal was to build some safety stock for a specific material because we had some builds coming to the customer. Of course, this was not still in the production phase. And then the person that was the department manager that was responsible for buying the material and make sure that we had a safe stock, send an email kind of asking, okay, but he asked a question is, could you do something like that or could you help with something like that? And then I was talking here with a Dutch colleague, and my Dutch colleague here said, I do not understand what he's talking about. What he's saying, who should do that? And it was like a very indirect way to ask the project to pay for something. And I told my Dutch colleague, what he's asking us to pay for the cost to build the safety stock. And my Dutch colleague, nah, but he's not asking that. Because, of course, he was not directly asking that. He was not writing down directly, can the project pay for that? He was saying, yeah, but someone needs to pay for that. Who should take care of this kind of stuff? He was doing an indirect way. Well, this is an indirect way to communicate, but that's very common in Mexico and in Brazil. So I told my colleague like that he's asking us to pay for that. If the project agrees to pay for that, I'm sure that he's going to execute it right away. And my Dutch colleague looked at me saying, huh? That's it? Okay, let's pay for that. If that's the issue, that can be solved very fast. And then we send an email to the guy saying, okay, the project will pay for that. You can put the cost in this cost center here, and then it's done. Then the reply was, okay, thank you. We are doing this right away. This is just to showcase how our cultural difference there will direct influence in our communication. Because again, we were talking about exactly the same topic as in the image here, but because of culture wise, like in also in Brazil or in Mexico, you're not going to see people saying something so directly, and mainly because of hierarchy and all this kind of stuff. Then that's of course why you see confrontation and avoids confrontation. You're not going to say something that direct as as you see people doing, for example, in the Netherlands or Germany. And then, of course, depend if I was not there because I'm Brazilian again. I understand what they were asking because it's exactly most of the cases. It's how also you see people asking this kind of stuff in Brazil. And in the Netherlands, okay, if that's what you want, just say it straightforward. But that would create, if I would have a discussion with my colleague, that would have created a lot of big communications, maybe a need for a meeting and so on. And in general, the guy in Mexico, he might not be comfortable saying something there. Hey, you need to pay for that directly like that, and that could have created a long communication issue or a long communication chain of emails or meetings or discussions before the people in the Netherlands or the team in the Netherlands here would understand. Say, yeah, we can pay for that. That was not the issue in this kind of situation. Again, that's why you are going to see communicate. That's why you're always going to see communication being a challenge in different types of project. So I've already shown you we can look for exactly the same thing, having the same cultural background, and we are going to see different things. Now I'm giving you an example how the cultural background is going to change a lot of things because of emotionally expressive or unexpressive, but also because of confrontational. Like in confrontational, it's like a hierarchy, meaning in the Netherlands, people are expected to be very direct with anybody else. So you tell your boss, your manager, or the owner of the company directly what you're thinking about something. While you're going to see a lot of different cultures that avoid confrontation, they are never going to tell something directly to their boss. Say, "Hey, I don't think that's going to work." And I have another also very nice example to showcase that. In Brazil, I was working as a project manager in a Japanese company, and I had a Japanese director there. Really, he was from Japan, and he was living in Brazil as one of the directors to manage the company. And we had all like monthly meeting reviews, so they could check the progress of the project and so on. And the project had some budget issues because during the quotation phase, a specification was not considered in the quotation from one of the equipments that we had to buy from the supplier. So of course the price of the equipment was much higher than it should be, and we had a budget problem because of that. Well, the Japanese director, he literally told me go there and change the specification in the meeting. But it was something that was not feasible because he was asking me to change the specification. But because this was like an infrastructure, this was a kind of infrastructure regulation for the entire country in Brazil. So it's not like I can change something just because it does not fit my project. And I told him right away, no, we cannot do that. And he was kind of shocked because in the Japanese culture, they're not expected that someone like I was a project manager, and then there was a manager, there was like a general manager, and then there was a director that it was his position. So if you look in the company, there were few steps before I would get directly to him. So for him it was not normal. How can you tell me no? I'm the boss. I'm telling you to do this. And of course, the discussion was not exactly like that. And I told him, but I cannot do that. That's not possible. This is the basic infrastructure specification that you have because it's energy infrastructure. So the companies are not allowed to put to install equipment without reaching the minimum specification. Otherwise, you are going to cause problem in the entire power distribution power system in Brazil. And he was confused and he insisted with me a couple of times. And I told him a couple of times that was not feasible. And in the end of the discussion, he just told me, okay, I'm going to talk with your boss. And I said, okay, fine, go and talk with my boss. I'm perfectly fine explaining what I mean there. But again, this was a communication that was difficult because first of all, because of the he was not expecting me that I would just tell him that's not possible because culture-wise, that's less acceptable in Japan than it's in Brazil, and of course, even much more different here in the Netherlands. But that's how again how you end up having communication issues. The different backgrounds, there's different kind of expectations, so you are going to see all different levels of thinking that you are going to have. And right now, for example, I've right not I've been working for I don't know how many years already. I've been working since 2017 in global projects. What do I mean by global projects? It means that I work with people in the Netherlands. I've worked with people in Italy. I've worked with people in Germany. I've worked with people in Poland. I've worked with people in China, in Malaysia, in Thailand, in the US, Mexico, Singapore. So when you mix out all those different countries, of course, that enhances the possible communication issues that you're going to have. Other example of communication issue that you can have. I've worked with a lot of suppliers, for example, from China, And a lot of times when you ask someone to do that, say, hey, can you do that? A lot of times you get an answer, yeah, depend. Of course, that depends on the person. So a generalization is just trying to make a point. I'm not trying to discriminate or anything like that. But in general, they say yes with the idea of yes, we are going to try our best to achieve what you're doing there. And for me, because of my background and of course because I've been in the Netherlands for a while right now, so when you say yes, it's possible and I'm going to do it. Because if it was not possible, I would expect you to tell me, no, that's not feasible. So that's a different cultural gap that I also had to learn. Because when you say, okay, they're telling me yes, then I would have to ask questions around it. Okay, what do you need to do that? How long do you think that needs to be done? Do you need support for something else? Does it need to be priority? Do you have other all other kind of questions to understand if someone telling me yes, it means that yes, they are going to try their best, but the chances of succeeding is very low, or yes, we can guarantee that's going to be done like that. So again, different cultures will also just enhance the communication challenge that you have there. And of course, not just different cultures. You have other types of barriers that you can face in communication, like the basic one that we deal every day. It's physical. We do virtual meetings, so a lot of times if you talk with someone face to face, it's much easier to understand each other than if we are talking about a virtual meetings. Can be language. I mentioned that I'm working global teams, so for a lot of those team members, English is not the first language, including for myself. So sometimes you express yourself, and depending how it's translated in different language, the same expression can mean something really bad, sometimes even something offensive, and it's not intended to be done like that. So all those kinds of those small things will start to pile up to create communication challenges for you. I already talk about culture. I already talk about language. I already talk about physical. But when you talk about culture, you to have culture, even in the same type of culture, you are going in different types of culture. You are going to have someone that are more assertive, someone that have more power distance there. You are going to have some cultures, as I mentioned, the example that's okay to be direct. Some other cultures they are going to consider that rude. Then you are going to have problems. And what if you are trying to work in a team and you want to reach, because if you want to have a high performing team, what do you want there? You want to make sure that you have transparency. Mainly, some type of cultures, they also are afraid to say that they have not exactly they are afraid, but some type of cultures they are very proud of their work, which is a good thing. But also, depending how the situation goes, can be a pitfall. Because if you are too proud of something, if there's a problem, you don't want to show it right away. So that might create a problem with transparency there. And so because people are very proud of their work, they don't want to showcase right away their problems. They just want to highlight what's going right. And of course, it's not about right or wrong, but if you're managing a project and if you want to succeed, you also need to know what are the problems, what's not working, because then you can understand how you can work together to overcome this challenge. I've worked, for example, with a plant in Poland, and I'm going to talk about Poland here, just to let you know, because I'm not picking random cultures here. I'm talking about Brazil. I'm Brazilian. I'm talking about the Netherlands, where I live, and Poland, because I have Poland roots. I have a last name. I have two last names. One is Kowalski, which is Poland, which is Polish. So that's why I'm also talking about Poland here. They were facing some challenges, but they don't want to show the problems that they're facing the manufacturing side, even though it was in the project team, because they were afraid in how they would look like because of the problem. But again, because they were proud of their work. And of course, what happened is the problem starts to grow, and something you have something that's much more difficult to manage the situation just because you're not sharing, you're not having this transparency in the beginning. So if you want to have a high performing team, you need to foster transparency, but how you are going to communicate things, it's going to influence that. How your communication is perceived, it's very much influenced on that. And of course, just to make things a bit more complex with the communication part, now think about, and I'm talking about here, I give some examples, one-on-one differences, but think about if you have a team of five, six people. And this is something that I like. This comes from when I studied for the PMBOK, or I do not know even the first time that I've seen this formula here. Basically, is to calculate the potential communication channel in a project. What's a communication channel? For example, I'm working a project, you are working a project. We have a communication channel between us. But there's someone else, let's assume that we have someone else working the project called John. So I have a communication channel with John, and you have a communication channel with John. So if we are in three people, we already have two communication channels in the project there. And of course, if you start to increase the number of people, those communication channels will only increase. What does it mean? Does it mean that can also create a communication challenge for you? Now imagine that communication is always a challenge because if you have two people looking for the same thing, they can see different things. If they have the different backgrounds, this distance there and having a good communication channel there, a good communication flow will grow. And now you put five or six people in the same team, all combining. So this challenge can only grow. So how do you handle that as a project manager? That's why you need an occasion where the team gets together and everybody can talk, hopefully towards a common goal. That's why the importance of having a common goal and the importance not only having a goal, because a lot of people tell me, yes, I have a goal, but if the goal is not clear for the project team, you have a problem. Because ideally, what you want everybody working in the same direction. And if you don't have everybody working in the same direction, then you're going to have a problem because you might have people working in opposite directions there. So you need to have a common goal. This common goal needs to be clear for your team members, and you need to discuss the project together. A lot of times people think it's a waste to have I don't know, five people in a meeting room because not all the five people will be talking at the same time, and sometimes you are discussing different topics. But what happens quite often, you can get different inputs from different people, which is going to be value added there for your project. So it's very important that you have those occasions, depending on the type of project, depending on what you're going to do it. You can have it once a week, twice a week, depending on how you're executing your project. That's why, for example, on Scrum, what you have on Scrum, one of the events of Scrum, it's the daily Scrum or a stand-up meeting. What is the goal of something like that? Alignment. And of course, if you use the words of Scrums, what's the goal? Transparency, so the team members can talk about what they are doing, understand what's the sprint goal, and align what's the next steps. And of course, they can inspect whatever they are doing there. They can inspect the next steps or the progress so far, and they can adapt to make sure that they can reach a goal. That's why they do that every day. But what you are trying to do in a daily Scrum, one of the very important things that you do there, aligning on communication, aligning what needs to be done there. And aligning what needs to be done, it's directly connected with communication. Because sometimes people are doing tasks that interfere in each other, but just don't know it. So there you have an opportunity to communicate, to talk, to have transparency, to have inspection, to have an adaptation. So communication is key. That will influence your project in so many levels. So that's why it's important. Have a clear goal, make sure that the goal is understood, have frequently reviews to assess what's going to do, to also to bring transparency there. So also your goal as a project manager there, if you are doing a weekly meeting, a lot of times your goal is asking questions. Your goal is trying to reduce the distance between people and create a bridge to have a clear communication way to do it. In different ways, you can ask, okay, hey dear designer, here dear lead designer, what do you need here? And he's going to say blah 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 blah. And for example, I need to create an FMEA that's that's a risk management tool for technical risk management tool. FMEA stands for failure mode. And I forgot the acronym of FMEA. Anyway, so you're going to ask input from the designer, and you're going to go and how you make the bridge. You ask the other, hey, dear tester or dear engineer, here, dear process engineer, how does it affect the work that you're going to do that? You can make those bridges. You can try to stimulate the conversation. When someone says something, what you can do, you can rephrase it. Why again? Because just because someone is telling you, maybe someone is describing you an old lady here, but you cannot, it's not clear for you because you see a beautiful lady here, then you can rephrase it. For example, if someone say, I see in this picture an old lady here, say, let me see that's clear for me. We are looking for the same picture, the one that I have in the screen. That's also why sharing what you're discussing makes making it visual, makes it clear. So, okay, you see an old lady. So for you here, this is a nose, this is a mouth, and this is her eye. Then you can explain, okay, now I get your point. But I also see a beautiful lady here looking to the other side. Here is her neck, here this is a necklace, and you are bridging the communication. And more questions you ask, easier will be to identify. Because what happens in a lot of projects, like people put, this is an analogy, of course, people put a picture like that, say, is it clear for everybody? And everybody will say, yes, it's clear. But for someone, it is going to be clear that's an old lady. For me, it's going to be clear that's a beautiful lady. And for someone else, it will be clear that can be both. So asking only if it's clear might not help you to get the answer. That's why rephrasing and repeating it's a great way to do that. And of course, what other very important thing that will help you? If you rephrase, if you repeat, you share. You should literally share. You can share images, you can share your screen, you can share the plan, you can share the budget, and you show people what you're talking about. It makes more concrete. And you always, that means that you always review. So when you talk about, for example, what I do in my project to try to reinforce the communication when you talk about the timeline, I share the timeline of the project. Meaning that I put the timeline here and say, this is what we have as a timeline. And I ask questions to people. For example, the designer. Here, I'm assuming that you need 8 weeks to execute this design. What do you think? And they're going to say, 8 weeks sounds fine. But in these 8 weeks, also, I'm including the design reviews that you need to have, that approve, and then they say, no, no, then I need 2 extra weeks. So the communication, how you are going to stimulate the communication in your project is asking questions, is making those interactions. And very important, with already the understanding that the communication will be a challenge. Whatever you do, whatever the type of project that you work, I bet with you that communication is always a challenge. There's always even research from different institutions, including PMI and so on, showing that the miscommunications usually cause problems. So if you already understand that's already a big challenge for you to overcome, you need to work on that actively there to overcome this challenge. And if someone is still wondering, but why communication is a challenge? I just gave you all the reasons, not maybe not all the reasons in detail, but you are going to see that. And we don't even talk about other possible reasons that you might have there in your organization why communication is different, the level of information is different, the level of knowledge can be different. For example, the level of knowledge, a lot of companies they use acronyms there, And if you have someone that's quite new in a company, they are going to use an acronym there, and someone will not understand what this acronym means. For example, I just use one FMEA. That's a very common acronym that goes across industries, but you might not understand what does that mean. So if I tell you an FMEA, you're going to say, okay, I don't know what does that mean. So for me, that's useless. For if I tell you, we need, I'm using here a bit of automotive jargon here. We need a PPAP. PPAP, it's a term that's a document to release a component for production, or component or a process to release a component, a system, or a material to mass production in the automotive industry. So if I tell you without explaining to you, we need a PPAP, you're going to say, what's a PPAP? And depending on the type of background that you can find, people just say, okay. And you are not going to ask because also some people will be extroverts, some people will be introverts, some people will be shy to ask. They are going to be shy to say, oh, I don't know what you're talking about. So it's your job as a project manager already putting communication as a top priority, understanding that by standard, that's going to be a challenge in your project. If you know already that's by standard, that's a challenge in your project, you need to work actively to overcome that, to make sure that you can make things as clear as possible there. And because if you don't, sooner or later you're going to have more problems and more, if you have start to have conflict with your project, what tends to happen depending on the type of conflict that you have? Sometimes the positive disclosure, people telling the problems will go down, the open communication will go down, collaboration will go down, and the transparency will go down. And all those things will impact the performance of your team and it will impact your performance as a project manager and will impact the goal, will impact the delivery of the goal of the project. Because remember again, the most important thing that you need to do for a project is delivering value. The ultimate goal of any project is delivering value. Project value can mean different things in different situations, but you always need to think about how you're going to deliver value into your project there. So make sure that now you understand why communication is always a challenge. You work actively in your project to mitigate as much as possible misunderstanding, to mitigate communication issues, to make sure that you can deliver more value as a project manager there. Again, don't forget to like and share this video here so it can reach more people and more people can learn about project management. But also, if you do that, you help my channel because then the social media will understand this is an important thing and also will distribute this to more people. So, thank you, and I'm going to see you around. Bye.